For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
Annette Wantling of Wardle, Landshire in England.
It's Lancashire.
Lancashire?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It is. It's Lancashire.
Sorry, Annette. This week's Law & Order Marathon winner is Annette Wantling of Wardle, Lancashire in England. Annette will get a marathon decal showing she watched 26.2 hours of her favorite crime show. To be next week's winner, sign up at lawandorderpodcast.com.
I'm Kevin Flynn with Rebecca Lavoie and Hank Kratulis, and these are their stories.
You think you know who did it, but you don't know who did it. Law and order, law and order, law and order. It's no ordinary police procedural, baby. It's the FNOG of police procedurals, baby. Law and order, law and order, law and order, law and order. These are their stories, these are their stories.
Welcome to These Are Their Stories, the podcast about network TV's most enduring crime franchise and the real-life cases that inspired their shows. I'm Kevin Flynn. Each podcast will break down an episode from either Criminal Intent, SVU, or Original Recipe. And today we're looking at the mothership Law & Order, Season 5, Episode 20, Bad Faith.
What, nobody reported him?
Oh, we were just kids. I mean, it was a big deal. Our parents loved him. What are kids going to do against a parish priest?
What are we saying here? Marino heard Krolinsky's back in town. He knows he likes kids. Then what? Fill in the blanks, Mike.
Joining me to do just that is true crime author and host of Crime Writers On and Netflix's Signal Award-winning... No, actually, you lost the Signal Award.
Oh,
sorry. You can't make this up podcast. It's Rebecca Lavoie. Hello, Rebecca.
Does it count that I won a Signal Award for something I made at work, my day job?
It does not. Rounding out our panel is our special guest from the Procedural Veneration podcast. It's Hank Kratulis. Hi, Hank.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. There was a brief moment when you were introducing Rebecca where I was terrified for a second. I was like, oh, please tell me Kevin knows who I am and doesn't think I'm an author.
Well, is there another Hank Kratulis? Because there's another Kevin Flynn, and we both wrote for the same publisher, and I am not getting his checks.
That's very disappointing. As far as I know, I am unique, luckily.
Yeah. Well, you say in your podcast that you discuss crime procedurals that you've watched way too many times, and your first two episodes were about Law & Order and SVU. So what makes a good procedural, and are either of these shows good?
That is such a great question. I don't even know if we're the experts on what a good procedural is, especially given how
neither
many...
are we, but you know.
Fair enough. On our podcast, we like to watch the best, the worst, and the median episode, which we joke gives us a great insight into the series, which it never does, because the best is invariably some kind of annoying story beat that is meaningless if you haven't seen the rest of the show, and the worst is just either controversial or extremely boring. Procedurals, honestly, Law & Order and SVU are pretty far up there, at least in terms of writing.
Really?
Yeah. Which,
I mean, wow.
Yeah. I didn't really think they were even that notable when we started with them, but then we coming back to watch this after watching now 9 other shows that are not in the Law & Order cinematic universe. I was like, oh no, yep, that's pretty well written.
Yeah. What was the worst SVU episode? I have to. What did you guys do for that one? Because I have thoughts.
It was the Gamergate episode featuring Logan Paul.
Oh, yes. That's a very good
hell
choice.
No.
Very good choice.
Yeah.
Hell no. That's a sneaker line, right?
Yeah. I know the best Law & Order one that you did was called Aftershock. That is the Claire Kincaid gets killed at the end.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler
Fucking
alert.
hell, that was like 25 years ago.
That's the execution episode, right?
The execution episode.
Yes, I don't think that's the best one, but people like it.
Hank, of all the franchises, which two cops are your favorite detective team?
Favorite Law and Order detective team.
It's almost certainly one that we haven't really got to yet, which is essentially a crime procedural, but way more comedy, which is Psych, in my opinion. You've got Gus and Sean.
I'll point out that you failed to grasp the assignment. And the question was, your favorite Law & Order detective team.
Law and Order detective team.
You see, synonymous with Law & Order in my head is just a general crime procedural. So I was
there
like,
you go.
Oh, yeah.
I can't really argue that, yeah.
I love this.
I have a big sweet spot for Jerry Orbach as Lenny for some reason. I really liked his character in Aftershock, and I was sad to hear that he passed. I also liked Claire, because Aftershock is also a heavy Claire episode where you get to have some background.
Yeah.
So I guess the commonality here for Hank is he likes the ones who die.
Yeah. Wait, what a downer, Hank.
You're a sick motherfucker, man. All right, now let's talk about the first half of this episode, Law & Order Season 5, Episode 20, Bad Faith. Now, just to know, we're going to be talking about fictional detectives investigating fictional sex crimes against fictional victims. But if you still find that especially heinous, you may want to check out another one of our episodes.
Fictional.
Yes. It only happened on paper. Patrolmen alerted to a man shot in the head in Riverside Park discover the victim is Detective Billy Marino. His service weapon is missing. Logan tells Van Buren and Briscoe that he grew up with Marino, whose most recent assignment was sex crimes.
We checked his notebooks. Whatever he was up to, he didn't tell anybody about it.
Secret hobby he wasn't proud of?
Not according to his partner.
Not according to anybody, Lenny. I knew the guy since kindergarten. He made the tough calls. He was solid.
Mike.
What? You want to know about his hobbies? Work and family. Family and work, period.
Logan is summoned to see his old boss, Captain Don Cragen, who's now assigned to anti-corruption. Could Marino's death be connected to his most previous assignment at the highly compromised 15th Precinct? Mike insists that Billy was clean, and his widow says something was bugging him after a phone call with Father Joe Krolinsky, their childhood parish priest. You know, the one with the reputation. Krolinsky tells Briscoe and Logan that he left the priesthood 15 years ago, got a good job in insurance, and has a wife and kids. Was Marino going to shake him down over something from their past? The detectives talked to all of Mike's old friends from the neighborhood, several who say Father Joe molested them. One says Marino hinted at shaking old Father Joe down. When they finally recover the bullet, they find it matched Marino's gun, and the patrolmen admit they took the gun to make his suicide look like he was killed in the line of duty. Kincaid says that Father Joe's crimes would fall beyond the statute of limitations, and his only arrest back in the day was for a misdemeanor groping. But when Briscoe and Logan talked to that victim, he says he withheld that the assault was way more explicit. McCoy reasons that because the police didn't know at the time it was a felony-level assault, they can charge him. All right, let's be clear and clear the air here. It's all about Logan. You can't spell Chris Noth without no, but apparently you can be Chris Noth without no.
What do you mean, Kevin?
It's 2 years now since we've done a Logan episode because of these allegations against Chris Noth, sexual assault allegations. He says those incidents were consensual. 4 women say they weren't. There's no reason not to believe the women.
No.
This is him, Chris Noth, in the wallet. He was dropped from The Equalizer by his agency. And just like that, he was dropped by Peloton. A $12 million acquisition deal for his tequila brand fell through. And the only work he can get now is in a public service campaign from a menswear brand to raise awareness for men's mental health issues. And they also say he's not getting paid in money, he's only getting paid in clothes.
I mean, he'll be fine.
He'll be fine.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
He's probably still getting residuals from these old episodes, right?
Yeah.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, we probably just helped him in a way.
I don't feel bad for Chris Noth. I just don't. I'm sorry. He's one of the ones I don't feel bad for in any way.
You can't always know the person behind the persona. And while his actions may be disturbing to us, we are not going to let your shitty behavior destroy the thing that we have built on our own. So while we've decided to move on, it doesn't mean we're going to forget that you have shown who you are. And that is for Mr. Chris Noth.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're ever wondering what happened to Don Cragen after he left the show in season 3, and before going to the 2-7 and landing on SVU, apparently he was working for anti-corruption in the biggest office in the history of Law & Order.
No shit.
It looks like he was in the library, Hank.
Yeah.
Okay? I never saw anything that made me think twice.
Well, that's good. That confirms everything I saw in his filing.
Then what am I doing here?
There were a lot of scenes between him. It kind of looked like he was just taking Logan out for like a day on the town, because there was the scene with him in that library looking office. There's a scene with him in like a diner, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have no context for who this guy is really, other than the little flash up text that it's his office.
Yes. So the IAB cops wonder if Billy Boy Marino, Billy Boy Marino, whether he was on the take because he once worked at the troubled 15th precinct.
He works sex crimes. That's not exactly a gold mine, okay?
And before that, he worked narcotics at the 1-5.
A lot of guys at the 1-5 drive home in Corvettes.
Where everybody goes home in a Corvette. Well, I just want to note, and Hank, you may want to make a note of this as well, that the 15th precinct is the home to the rival cop show NYPD Blue.
Ooh.
So Dennis Franz, you piece of shit! Everybody's going home in a Corvette, including Jimmy Smits, apparently.
Was that on in 1995?
Absolutely it was.
Oh, wow.
By the way, NYPD Blue shot on a soundstage in Los Angeles. Law & Order shot entirely on sidewalks caked with dried gum.
My only exposure is that David Caruso was on it for one season, thought he was hot shit and quit, and then proceeded to barely do anything until getting CSI Miami.
That's right.
Yeah.
And taking off his sunglasses every episode.
Can you do the yow?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do that anymore. So everyone's lost track of Father Joe until they learn that he's living in this beautiful townhouse with his family as Joseph Krolinsky.
Good to see you again, Mike. Can I offer you some coffee?
We're okay, Father.
The only people who call me that are my kids. I haven't been a priest in nearly 15 years.
I'll say not for nothing. He was totally the oldest dad for school pickup, right? He looks like he's 60.
No, I mean, for sure. It's clearly a part of a plot point that, after he left the parish pretty late in his life, right, to become a father. But for sure, this guy is going to be lucky if he makes it to his child's graduation.
Yeah. I'll say he was way too enthusiastic about the daddy-daughter dance.
Oh, God.
It's like, mind if I cut in?
I think it was more about the father-son picnic. Is what I think.
So when they talk about what to do with Father Joe, Logan thinks...
Now that we got the death penalty back, I know he's got my vote for the grand opening.
Hey, you want to get even with Krolinsky, put him in the shower room with arsening for 5 minutes.
See, I think they're actually gleefully trying to say that the punishment should fit the crime, as if maybe Chris Noth should die on a Peloton. So we got a couple of Hey, It's That guys.
We do?
Hey, it's that guy.
Who is the actor playing Father Joe?
My company transferred me here last year. I ran into Bill's mother on the subway. I used to counsel her when I was a priest. Anyway, she told me how well Bill was doing. Thought I'd like to hear from him.
I don't know. Did not recognize him.
That's Bill Raymond, 4 Law & Order appearances. He's had roles in Michael Clayton, Golden Years, and 12 Monkeys. And he played the crime boss, the Greek, in Season 2 of The Wire.
Really?
Yeah, but Rebecca will remember him as Roy, the old man who could not stop jerking off at the senior center in HBO's Mrs. Fletcher.
Oh, my God, that show. That show was just masturbation, like from opening credits to closing credits every single episode. It was incredible.
The old man was masturbating.
Mrs. Fletcher was masturbating.
Her son was masturbating.
It was just a giant wank off. Like, wank, 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 wank. If you like wanking, watch Mrs. Fletcher. Or if you like Catherine Hahn.
These are my people.
Yeah. You love the show. You love everything about it.
Yeah. He was in the movie Lincoln as House Speaker Schuyler Colfax, who was ousted by Matt Gaetz for being soft on crime.
He's not the guy who violently says "I," but he does get to cast a vote in the final moment there. And
he has played a priest many times. Actually, he was a priest in Rob the Mob. Father Fahey in A Matter of Propriety, Father Jackson in A Death in the Family, Father Francis in Cupid and Kate, a priest in Christmas Evil, Father Cadill in Summer of Sam, Reverend Miller in Now and Then, and I guess when casting directors look at him, they just say, yeah, child molester.
I bet he comes to the auditions wearing that outfit.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yes. Like, it's already
He's
custom
like, I
fit.
stole it from the
collar.
set of Law and Order. I have it. I'm going to save you like $18 at the costume place. Just hire me.
Is it okay if I bring my own vestments?
I already know my collar is 13 and a half. Yeah, perfect. So you know who's playing Scully?
Who?
Scully.
Who?
All right, well, Gillian Anderson obviously is playing Scully, but in this episode, Scully, the truck driver.
Marino said he'd been keeping tabs on him.
Meaning what?
Marino's in the business of busting perverts. Father Joe certainly qualifies.
He is being played by Stuart Zully. 8 Law & Order appearances for the trifecta. He's had small roles in The Sopranos, Private Parts, and Vice. He is a working actor and director, and his character, remember his character, he's the one who got the tickets to Shea Stadium that Father Joe gave
truck
him.
Driver.
Yeah, but Stuart, the actor, actually spent 40 years as a vendor at Yankee Stadium. And that's why he smells like hot dog water. Which is the best kind of water.
What did he do in Private Parts? It's like one of my favorite movies.
He wasn't a big role. He was, remember, he left the set and then went to sling cotton candy in the grandstand, you know?
Did he play the kid that Howard Stern bounced the Frisbee off of his face?
I think he was older than that. He was about the same. So can anyone tell me who's playing this guy, Don Cragen?
Here's a list of the people we're looking at the 1-5. Any of those names come up in connection with Marino, you let me know. And Mikey, this could get hot and heavy, so you keep that famous temper of yours in your pocket, huh?
Is it the guy who plays Donald Cragen?
Yeah, Don Cragen. Who's the actor?
I don't remember.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No, I don't remember.
Dan Florek.
Oh, it's Dan Florek, Kevin.
Yeah.
You have to cut that to make me not sound stupid.
Oh, no, I'm leaving that in. I might play that on a loop.
It's Dan Florek.
Yeah, actually, it's Ezekiel Dan Florek.
Dan Florek.
His first name, he's known as...
E. Dan Florek.
What is he known as? Mr. Slate in the Flintstones.
What?
Or he also may be for his 403 appearances on the mothership in SVU as Cragen, one of the longest-running characters in television history. Just putting it out there, Rebecca.
Not as long as Scotty Baldwin on General Hospital.
No, and I think maybe Mark Harmon is caught. I don't fucking know anymore. Meredith Grey. I mean, it just keep adding up. This is the first time he is back on Law & Order since NBC forced Dick Wolf to replace him and Richard Brooks with female characters. But this is also the third time Dan Florek got to direct an episode of Law & Order, all after Dick Wolf showed him the door. For the historians here, that it actually was Warren Littlefield from NBC who told Dick Wolf that if he wanted to keep Law & Order on the air, they had to have female cast members.
More ladies.
Gotcha. More ladies. And that's how Esapatha Murkerson and Jill Hennessy ended up coming on the show. Jill Hennessy's first scripts still had Robinette's name as her character's name. And she's like, "Who was this my name?" So it was very abrupt. Dick Wolf never liked it, and that's why he found ways to bring them back.
And kill off Claire.
Yeah, kill off Claire, you know.
Poor Claire.
And you would have thought that it would have been really awkward for Dan Florek to direct Esapatha Murkerson in an episode, and she said no. The first time that they met, he was extremely gracious. This is the last time, this third episode, last time he has a directing credit. So in between his stints on the mothership and on SVU, he played Abraham Lincoln in what is considered to be TV's most racist comedy.
What?
He played Abraham Lincoln in...
yeah.
You know what it is? No, The Secret Diary of Desmond Pfeiffer.
Oh, never mind.
It's the Civil War, and the ambassador from England is a black man named Desmond Pfeiffer, but it's Pfeiffer because the P is not silent, and there's all sorts of horrible jokes, and this was the actual marketing tagline the network used to promote it. I think it was WB. This is the network's tagline. Critics hate it.
Oh.
That was the deal. Okay, let's check it out.
Wow. It's like our podcast.
Half of the episodes were shot, never aired. Yeah, it's just like our podcast.
Wow.
There's something so charming in thinking that just being counter is enough for people, and then watching people get sorely disappointed when they find out that it is not.
Critics hate it, and so do I.
And so do I. We have a repeat offender.
Repeat offender.
Playing police officer number 1 is Michael Cullen.
You read our report. It's all there in black and white.
We saw him as the embarrassingly named Chief of D's in the Everybody Loves Raymundo's episode.
Uh-huh.
Who wouldn't want to be known as the Chief of D's?
I mean...
Not a lady. I got it. Okay, lastly, can you tell me who is playing Vince, the bartender who told the guys about being molested?
Father Joe molested me when I was 11. A lot of other kids, too. Billy was pretty worked up. Said we should do something about what he did to us. Take him to court, sue him.
You didn't recognize him? That's Billy Van. Canadian children will remember him from the 1970 show The Hilarious House of Frightenstein.
Did you think we were going to know that?
Of course not. That's what this whole bit is about.
I mean, sometimes it's like an obvious layup. Sometimes it's like Judith Light, not Billy Van from some obscure Canadian television show.
Yeah, he played the Count back in the days when you could get away with performing in greenface.
We just reviewed an episode of Numbers with Ray Wise in it of Twin Peaks fame, and so that would be a good get for me. But then I'm not a Canadian child, unfortunately.
Yeah. Billy Van played the Scarecrow in the 1982 version of The Wizard of Oz. That was a cartoon. Billy died of cancer in 2003. His photo hangs in the Canadian Comedy Wall of Fame right next to legends like Al Waxman and Don Herron. And I may not be Canadian, but I think I've got half a chance to make that wall. All right, so during the investigation, Logan goes to the payphone to call somebody, and it's got to be Profaci.
Oh, Profaci.
Yeah, it's Logan. You beat me.
You beeped me. I'm trying to imagine the time when cops had to walk around with a pocket full of dimes in case they needed to call into work. That's hysterical to me.
How big was the NYPD's dime reimbursement budget?
I need a receipt for that dime. Now, son of a bitch.
He was on the take for dimes.
For dimes.
He was clean. He only had 4 dimes in his pocket.
What we never see is like the angry, impatient guy behind them waiting to use the payphone. It's like, come on, man, I gotta call somebody. There's not like some civilian listening in for what he's saying. Like, what? They found a bullet in his penis? Like, oh wow, this is better than my call.
Note-taking member of the press with a little sign in his fedora.
Little card.
There we go. Yeah, exactly.
I just overheard of the payphone.
Yeah, I thought, by the way, it's because he has a pager, which is totally appropriate for 1995. I thought I was so cool when I had a pager.
You had a pager?
Yeah, before, this is the time, before everybody got a cell phone. But it was like...
Were you a drug dealer?
I was not a drug dealer. I was not a stockbroker. I was not a doctor.
Did you ever get, those beeper messages where, the letters stood for numbers like they used to do?
Like boob?
No,
like 800?
where it was I love you, the whatever was the I and the L and the Y. You never got those?
No.
You never got those
no one paged me saying
sexed beeper beeps?
Sexy pages.
Yes, that was a thing.
Before cyber sex.
Before people had burner phones for their side pieces, they had burner pagers and they'd have codes and you didn't do that?
No.
Me neither. I'm just asking if you did.
Hank, what numerical combination would give you a boner?
Where to begin, really?
Anything with pi.
Which one wouldn't? 6969.
Oh, wow.
Although I will argue to this day, it should be 67. It really should be 67. I'm just saying, it's a 7, not a 9, in my opinion.
It took me quite a while into public school to figure out what 69 meant, and when I heard it, I was like, well, that's just stupid.
Because it should be a 7. I'm just saying.
Saying if you open your mouth more.
Hey now.
You could make it and it'd be a...
Hey now. This is a kid's show.
I have no idea.
It's a family program.
Yes. It's
no, it's
the
not.
Hilarious House of Frightenstein.
It's not.
Just kidding. Fuck you, kids. Yeah. but not like the episode.
No.
Yeah, fuck you, Canadian.
No, not like Father Joe style.
No. So they put it together when the patrolman took the gun that Marino used to shoot himself so it wouldn't look like a suicide.
We were just trying to do right by the guy's family.
Just try doing right by regulations.
We found him with his service piece in his right hand. He was a suicide, no question. We ditched the gun, took his gloves off.
What in hell crossed your mind to do something like that?
That way his family could get more money. And even though they've committed several crimes in doing this, Kincaid says...
I talked to McCoy. We won't be pressing charges against the officers. The department will handle it.
Which means the department isn't going to handle it.
Nope.
They're like, oh, well, whatever.
Where's our rug? Let's pick it up and go like this.
Aren't we thinking that they want us to think these cops are heroes for doing this? Like, good job for Billy Boy.
Way to lie.
Way to lie, but it's a good lie.
It's a really like Golden Lie.
Yeah.
Really. But I mean, these guys are cops. They really should know how to fake a crime scene.
Where did that gun go?
Cops,
Where did they put the gun?
The place they put all the guns.
You got the gun locker if you want.
In the black guy's trunk.
Oh,
so
boy.
that they could like bust that guy. Yeah.
You know, the guys like, I need a side piece to drop just in case I
Yeah.
shoot somebody, so I'm going to take Marino's. And it's convenient.
Yeah. Throw it in the river.
When you had a beeper for all of your illegal guns.
Yeah. It's like on the softball team, everybody uses everybody else's bat. It's, it's fine. You go home with yours, go home with somebody else's. So Briscoe and Logan talked to an adult victim who told the police back in the day that the touching was over the clothes because his parents made him say that, but he said it was really on the inside.
He put his hand in my pants. Gray flannel pants I got for Christmas. And when it was over, he made a mess on my new pants.
This scene was actually extremely well written, extremely well acted, and extremely gutting. And it's the one scene where I was like, how are we going to do this show in the podcast? Because I felt like I was watching Spotlight when I was watching this scene. It was so sad.
Yeah.
It was so sad. The memory was so visceral and so like grounding. And like the idea that like a grown man would be like, I just remember like having to hide my pants in the basement and like my parents found the pants. I mean, it's so sad.
Yeah.
It's deeply sad.
I 100% agree with you. It was really well written, really well acted. It felt like that was like the one scene of, all right, we're going to indulge on actually getting a little bit visceral and serious in order to cover the seriousness of this crime. And maybe because, a lot of our viewers might take offense at us suggesting that the Catholic Church would ever cover up a sex crime.
Yeah. They would never do that.
Which, by the way, we'll talk about in the second half. They completely like erase like the entire Catholic Church covering shit up in this episode. But we'll talk about that in the next half of the episode.
So this victim says that his mom took the pants and burned the pants. I'm like, what? In the fireplace? You live in a fucking tenement. All right, now let's take a look at the second half of this episode. Krolinsky's attorney is shocked that Jack McCoy would push the law to its limits in order to get a conviction.
I told Stewart he couldn't be in the choir anymore. He wasn't good enough. He ran home and told his parents this crazy story.
A lot of other people tell similar stories. Are they all being vindictive?
Neighborhood gossip. That's your case.
After the judge dismisses the charges, Jack and Claire seek to indict Krolinsky for conspiracy, conspiring with the archdiocese for transferring between parishes whenever a problem arose. The overt act, Krolinsky gave Marino $50,000. But the former priest has a shocking explanation. He claims young Marino recruited boys for him to molest, and the cash was a gratuity for his services. That means there's no conspiracy. Marino was simply an accomplice, and his crimes are now beyond the statute of limitations. At trial, the victims admit Marino offered them baseball tickets if he went to see Father Joe. Logan's testimony that Marino also solicited him takes Jack by surprise. While McCoy wants Olivet to testify that Marino was too young to consent to the sex crime, Kincaid points out that Mrs. Krolinsky has not been to court. They learned that years earlier, she filed a report with social services that Krolinsky molested their son, but quickly withdrew it. The caseworker says Detective Marino obtained that report before he took his life. Armed with new evidence, Jack gets Krolinsky to take a plea. Okay, even though their arrest for molestation was a lost cause, McCoy still thinks there's something that they might find out.
I've prosecuted pedophiles before, Adam. They defy rehabilitation.
Even golfers retire.
Oh, God.
The actual fuck, man? What the fuck are you saying?
That golfers work harder than pedophiles? That's like...
He's like, well, I'm getting old. Just too many strokes to get it in the hole.
Sure wish I was a pedophile. That'd be a lot easier.
Yeah. He's like, oh, man, I really love a foursome.
Listen, I used to find kids really attractive. Yeah, I've really aged out of that now. No, it's just that's not how pedophilia works.
It's like golfing.
Violent criminals, there are studies that show that people do age out of certain kinds of like violent crimes that are spurred by like the amygdala and like the brain stuff and like when people get into their 30s and 40s, like the recidivism like doesn't happen because people sort of age out of that. Pedophilia is not one of those things.
No.
It is not one of those things.
Apparently, golf is, though.
Golf is one of those things.
Yeah. He's like, hey, after 18 holes, I can barely walk. So McCoy and Kincaid go to the archdiocese, and they ask, like, well, what did you do about Father Joe?
The church had him for 20 years. I'm amazed you allowed him to slip through the cracks for so long.
We dealt with him as best we could based on what we knew then about his sickness. Now we put people like Mr. Krolinsky in your hands.
Yeah, after you spend 2 decades hiding him and moving him around like a shell game and not telling us what you did, we thought you'd just get around to arresting him.
No.
No.
To be fair, they also prayed.
Yeah.
They prayed, yeah. Thoughts and prayers don't cure pedophilia, apparently.
They don't unmolest children.
Thoughts and prayers aren't good for anything, apparently.
Yeah.
What have you been inhaling? Want to name the Catholic Church as a co-conspirator?
An unindicted co-conspirator.
I see. We don't charge them with conspiring to molest kids. We just say they did. It's going to be a great relief to the Archbishop.
Can we talk about the fact that the district attorney for the city of New York called the archdiocese to warn them in advance that they were going to be arresting a child molester who used to be a priest in conjunction with a conspiracy charge against the Catholic Church because they're just that cozy.
If we want to get him, this is the only way.
All right, I'll talk to the Archbishop. I'll let him know what's coming.
But we're not going to actually indict you. We're just going to say it, and they're good with it.
And the archdiocese was like, that sounds great. As long as you don't charge us, we're going to be like, cool. I'm sorry. That is so completely fucked up.
They're like, if you told us that 20 years ago, we would have been sending them all these different parishes.
But that's why this shit happens. Because it's like the cozy stuff, right? It's like so gross. The fact that Schiff was like, I'm going to call the cardinal and let him know. That's why this shit happens. And it's right there on its face, and it's completely unaddressed in the episode. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
And you're telling me that their response would not be to take their fat report personnel file and go burn it on the little candles? Bullshit.
Right next to the pants.
Still burning.
Oh, whatever that
Still
thing is
burning
called.
from 30 years previously.
A lot of protein in that. Yeah.
Ew.
Ow, why are you hitting me?
It's disgusting.
Hey, I'm not Father Joe.
It's fair.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
So these are the dueling theories of the case. So McCoy says that the $50,000 Marino got was hush money in furtherance of a conspiracy. Their defense is no, Billy Boy Marino acted as his pimp for crimes that are now outside the statute of limitations, and that cash was for services rendered. Now, the move was that Marino would approach a kid and say that if he went with Father Joe, he'd give them tickets for behind the dugout at Shea Stadium.
Detective Logan, did Billy Marino suggest you have sex with Mr. Krolinsky in return for baseball tickets?
Behind the dugout? Who was the priest blowing to get these tickets?
It's Shea Stadium, Kevin.
Well, I mean, still, behind the dugout.
In the 90s. Come on.
It's like the 70s for them, right?
Listen, we're not talking Yankee Stadium, okay? No. We're talking the Mets. We're talking Queens. It's really not that big a fucking deal. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Also, the Catholic Church could probably get them to coerce young boys.
It's true.
Yeah.
Little Tim Cook, the Cardinal Tim Cook, probably had a box.
They were only there when the Cardinals or the Padres came to town. But what do you think about like what the other season ticket holders were thinking? They look over and see a bunch of kids and they be like, "Oh, someone else made a date with Father Joe."
Oh.
You're assuming there were season ticket holders to the Mets, Kevin. That's another big fucking assumption.
They didn't show
I'm
up.
telling you. All right, when I was growing up, and I'm just not kidding. I grew up like in the 80s in New York. If you were like a Met on Long Island, where all the Mets fans were supposed to live, if you were a Mets fan, people were like, "You're a what fan now?" Like it's a thing now.
It's a thing now. Okay.
It was not a thing then. It was just not.
Apparently, it was not worth rolling the dice with a pedophile priest to get these tickets. Be like Mr. Miyagi and wax on, wax off, boom, boom. Sand the floor, whatever it was, you know?
I'm so sorry to any like old school Mets fans that are listening, but you know you were alone. My cousin Nick, was an Mets fan, and he was the only one. He used to have this Mets hat, and like he used to get yelled at on the street. It was a whole thing.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so they bring in Olivette.
Olivette, gentle Olivette, Olivette,
And she's just going to testify that at 13, Marino was too young to be an accomplice.
No shit. No fucking shit. The fact that this is even debatable is insane to me.
Every study on pedophilia bears it out. The adult is always in control. The child can never consent.
Marino was 13. Sounds old enough to me to know right from wrong.
Schiff explicitly says he was 13. He's old enough to know right from wrong. And it's like, still vastly too young to make decisions for himself, my guy. Like,
I'm surprised, like, you know, if they're not saying an accomplice, why don't they just say he was the mastermind of the whole thing? He's like, you know, Father, I have a deal for you. I know you would never, like, want to touch any of the boys, but look if I can get Mike Logan to come down there, what do you say you give me some of those tickets you got?
I say fuck this guy. This is the same kind of guy who was like, if this were a prep school, like, rape case, it would be like, do we really want to ruin this 16-year-old boy's life? He didn't know. I mean, he was just at a party, you know? What was he thinking at the time? Fuck this. He's 13 years old.
Yeah.
He's a child who was molested. For God's sakes. Fuck all these guys.
Yeah.
So this might have something to do with the time when this aired, 1995.
You think?
But from a writing standpoint, why not say that Logan was a victim too? They keep making like all these points, like, you know, he made the moves, but he didn't. I think it would be much more interesting dramatically. Why did they go to all these lengths to just kind of prove that no, he was the one altar boy who escaped?
He was strong enough to say no.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think today, if this happened in one of the dramas, that, you know, they would be praised. Like, it's good for survivor representation. It's breaking stigmas. It's very interesting dramatically for the development of a character. We have seen in the Law and Order universe, characters, you know, talk about their victimhood. My guess, and Hank, I want you to weigh in on this, is that they thought that a 1995 audience would look down on a character who'd been molested, that he wouldn't be a hero anymore on TV.
I think you're absolutely, at least on to part of it, right? Is I wouldn't be surprised if there was writer pushback on forcing that onto a character and like making them less of a character because of their past of trauma, which is kind of ridiculous because like we got to see Stewart, the one who had the really serious scene, and that was extremely profound work on the part of that actor, and it did nothing but bolster the character in the writing of the show, right?
Yeah. And the bartender dude who was just like, I was molested.
Yeah.
And now I'm living my life, like wiping the bar. And I'm,
Right.
It's silly. It's just silly.
I think that, like, they thought, Dick Wolf thought, or other NBC thought, you know, that you've ruined Logan, that people will look down on him. He can't be macho, that this, you know, to a 1995 audience calls into questions about his sexuality and his orientation and all that other stuff.
It would taint him.
It would taint him.
People
in a way,
love
right?
women victims. They don't love men victims. That's the thing we know also from this franchise, as demonstrated by a recent episode we did where even like years later, they're like arguing whether or not a man can be raped, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the whole thing is like male victims are like, you know, but a woman heroine who's like a victim too, we like putting women in their place in that way. We don't like putting men in their place in that way.
Hank, didn't you kind of think that maybe Logan was lying? That he was just like, he didn't want to bring himself to say it?
Father Joe was in charge of the altar boys. He had a reputation.
And?
Look, I haven't even told Lenny about this. Father Joe put the moves on me once.
Just felt like because they were making such a big deal about, no, he put the moves on me, but not me. Did you feel like maybe he was lying?
He sort of was at the start, right? Because they're trying to figure out who Father Joe is, right? And then at no point, and Mike is just like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. No further comments, right? No further comments on why anybody that I grew up with might be in contact with him or might have either taken their own life or been murdered shortly after contacting him. And then all this shit starts to come out, and then he's just like, oh yeah, that's a thing. Like, oh, cool. Thanks, Logan.
I think it would have been interesting. Logan could have been like, oh, you made a mess of my brown leather jacket and flag pin. All right, let's take a look at the real-life story that inspired this episode. It's time for Rip from the Headlines.
You think you know who did it. You think you know who did it. But you don't know who did it. You don't know who did it. Rip from the headlines.
The crimes of former priest James Porter serve as the inspiration for this episode. In 1960, just 1 year out of seminary, Father Porter was assigned to a Catholic grammar school in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. He was put in charge of the altar boys until 4 parents complained Porter molested their sons. Instead of calling police, church officials moved him to a new parish in Fall River. In 1964, Porter was arrested for molesting a boy before being assigned to yet another parish. He sought treatment for paedophilia at a facility run by other priests, who said Porter was cured. For the next few years, the clergyman bounced around new churches across the country. Finally, in 1973, Porter sent a letter to Pope Paul VI confessing to abusing children in 5 states. He asked the Pope to release him from the priesthood. Porter then moved to Minnesota, got married, and had 4 children. In 1990, former altar boy Frank Fitzpatrick came forward to accuse the former priest of raping him. Porter would be accused of molesting more than 100 children. The scandal snowballed as victims of other priests from across the country and around the world revealed their own tales of abuse. In 1993, the former priest was sentenced to 18 to 20 years in prison. James Porter died of cancer in 2005.
Okay, maybe this is, the first of maybe more unpopular takes that I have, but while the church has much to answer for, I think that these boys were let down by the justice system, by the mental health system, by families, by the culture that said that you should be ashamed of this. And, it's taken a long time, and it's not all the way there yet. But in the past 50 years ago, it was like your fault, kid, for letting the priest touch you, right?
And a large part, though, obviously the Catholic Church, and not just sheltering and protecting pedophiles from the law, but also in that the entire Catholic guilt, right? It creates a environment where you can very easily persuade someone that their sin is their burden. And so if you convince someone that something that you did was bad was a sin, they're going to feel bad about it, right? And try and keep it private. Really messed up.
That's right. That's right. And listen, I know that probably some Catholic people are listening right now, and I don't want to
I am.
Yes. This is a religion founded on part of it being that you go into a box to talk about your secrets, and those secrets don't come out of that box, right? And you're going into that box with the person who did the thing to you that is supposed to be kept a secret.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me there isn't a more ripe for predatory, hunting ground than that, right?
Well, this is my other unpopular take, all right?
Wait, why did you think the first one would be unpopular? I'm curious.
Oh, I don't know, because I just, my opinion is,
you have a huge Catholic audience.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. White guy.
This is being played at the Vatican.
Yeah.
This probably might be unpopular. Look, if you are a pedophile, you know you're a pedophile, right? That's not a surprise. It is very easy to become a scoutmaster, a little league coach, a gym teacher. It takes years and years of study to become a priest. It is not the fast track to getting access to children. And I think that in some cases, more than one pedophile believe that they could, if they turn their life over to the priesthood, if they turn their life over to God, God would cure them, which is a fucking stupid thing to believe in the first place.
Why is that a controversial opinion? I think that that's probably right too. And the church tells them that they can cure them.
Yeah.
They literally say, we will treat you for this. They say in this episode, and they say in real life, we're going to send you to a program that will cure you of this.
Yeah.
And they said that to that guy Porter, right?
Yeah, but I think, Hank, that it's way too reductive to just say, you wanted to have access to children, so you became a priest. Because I feel like there are way other, different ways that you could get access to children. It is very complicated to become a priest. But I think that, for some, the pedophilia is a motivator for pursuing that avocation.
For sure. And at least in modern times, we have mandated reporter laws for signs of child abuse that at the very least in most states, cover any kind of person who is given the trust of caring for children, teachers, clergy now, and scoutmasters and whatnot. But in some states, luckily, like Indiana, where I live, everybody. If you if you are told that there is or have any evidence that there's any kind of child abuse, not just child sex abuse, you are legally required to report that to CPS and the police, right?
Yep.
Like,
I like mandatory reporting.
Yeah, so do I. I have to say one thing otherwise, Kevin, that you haven't considered.
Yeah.
Is that I do think that predators are attracted to positions of power.
Sure, yeah.
So becoming a priest is hard, but it is also a very powerful position.
Sure.
So somebody who is a pedophile, it's not a crime about sex, it's a crime about power as well and subjugation. And I think that the priesthood is a position of power and subjugation. So there is something there where perhaps some people thought I can cleanse myself of these quote sinful thoughts and go. But I think a lot more of them probably thought I will be in a position of power and in a position to subjugate people.
Yeah.
And so that's also very attractive.
Yeah, and it's also well documented that a lot of pedophile priests were themselves abused as altar boys by other priests. And so,
it's a
cycle, absolute cycle. So how did they arrest Porter after his 20 years after leaving the priesthood? Well, don't be shocked, but that he continued to molest children.
Oh.
Porter molested.
He didn't retire like a golfer?
He didn't retire, no. Porter molested the babysitter's little sister,
oh my God,
which did fall within the statute of limitations. And then more victims came forward, recent victims came forward, civil attorneys got involved, reporters got involved, national news got involved. I guess I'm going to say lawyers and reporters are heroes, whatever. But he took a 20-year plea, as Sy said, and his first conviction was overturned on appeal.
For what?
The Minnesota Supreme Court agreed that the prosecutor crossed the line in his closing argument. He kept referring to the James Porter School of Sex Education. There was no such thing. He didn't tell his victims that. Yes, the James Porter School of Sex Education. Now, not good, but I do hear that in Georgia, Fonnie Willis is going to refer to the Rudy Giuliani School of Law. That's going to do it for us. We want to thank our guest, Hank Ratulis. Hank, where can our listeners follow you online?
You can check us out at Procedural Veneration. We are on pretty much every podcast aggregator, as well as on Instagram, Procedural Veneration, or procedural.veneration, or at our website, dank.pizza.
Dank.pizza.
Yeah.
All right. That was a switch. Rebecca, where can our listeners follow you?
You can follow me on every platform, but if you want to actually see content from me, at Twitter and Instagram is the place to go, at Reb Lavoie.
You can track me on Twitter at Kevin P. Flynn. I've been banned from Facebook for the last 28 days. You can tweet to me at Law & Order Podcast or follow us on Instagram at These Are Their Stories Pod. Our newsreader was Cy Frater. Our theme music was composed and performed by Uncanny Valleys. Content assistance from Travis Roy. Lily Flynn handles promotions. All clips in this podcast were used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act fair use exemption for criticism and commentary. Go to lawandorderpodcast.com and sign up for our newsletter for a chance to be our next Law & Order Marathon winner. These Are Their Stories was recorded in the Treehouse Yoga Studio above the Mockingbird Cafe in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, and is a production of Partners in Crime Media.
Partners in Crime Media.